Welcome to the Recess Life Podcast. This is the place where we explore play and what it means to get back to your inner child. I'm Louise, your host. Join me as I chat with teachers, entrepreneurs, artists, and thought leaders about how we can live a life of more play and impact. Let's get it started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Recess Life Podcast. I'm actually recording this from my childhood home here in Colorado. I'm in town visiting my parents, and it's been really cold. I'm not used to this anymore, having lived in California for 10 years, but I always love coming back here, and it is absolutely beautiful, despite it being cold. I can't believe Thanksgiving has passed already. Pretty soon it's going to be Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, New Year's, and then it's going to be 2020. I'm just trying to take it all in. I don't know about you, but it just happened so fast. So I'm just trying to take a breath while I'm here. And I'm actually headed to Mexico tomorrow for a couple weeks. I'm going to be traveling around with some friends, some on my own. And I'm looking forward to a change of scenery and hoping to just take some moments to myself and to reflect before 2020 hits. And I'm looking forward to a change of scenery. So I hope wherever you are that you are taking some time for yourself and to really just take it all in before the new year hits. My guest today is Morgan J. He is a comedian and musician based out of LA. I first learned of Morgan when I attended a So Far Sounds show where he performed. If you've never heard of So Far Sounds before, it is such a cool experience that I highly recommend. It is a concert series in these secret, intimate locations, and they're all over the world. I think they're in 400 cities all over the world, so highly recommend it. If you have never been to anything like that, look it up. It's probably in your city. And what's really cool is that you get to discover all these new artists that you may not have heard of before because they keep the artists secret as well. And Morgan was one of the artists at a show that I had gone to earlier this year. And usually at a So Far Sounds show, you can expect singer-songwriters, people that are that usually perform in an intimate setting. But Morgan is super unique in that he is a comedian, a musician, a storyteller. He is a master at interacting and bantering with the audience and telling stories. And I just really, really enjoyed him and just was all about everything he was in terms of the way he performs, and started following him on Instagram, the modern way of keeping up with artists. And since I've seen him at So Far Sounds, he has been a semifinalist on the NBC show Bring the Funny. It's a comedy competition series that was judged by Kenan Thompson, Chrissy Teigen, Jeff Foxworthy, some big comedic heavy hitters. And he did really well on that show. And he's just going places with his career. And in my mind, he really embodies what it means to have a playful spirit in the way you perform and in just the way you move through life. So I was super excited to have him on the podcast. And in our conversation, I just really dove into how he arrived into this place in his career. Was it planned? Was it spontaneous? How does he cultivate that playful spirit? And how does he deal with those challenges that comes with being a performer and being an entertainer? So I'm really excited to bring you this conversation. And you're going to hear me intersperse with my commentary throughout this episode, just little nuggets and takeaways and words of wisdom that I pull from our conversation. So you'll hear me interrupting a little bit throughout our conversation. And I hope you enjoy it, and happy holidays. So yeah, let's start from the beginning a little bit. So you grew up on the East Coast. When did you start playing music and comedy? When did that come into your life first?
Well, music was always a part of my life. My father was actually a pop star in Argentina.
For real?
He was 20 years older than my mother, and they met in New York City. And he was a chef in America, but when he was maybe in his early to mid 20s, he was a singer in Argentina. He was a musician, and he was like he sang at private parties and stuff in America and things like that. So he was one of the people who encouraged us to get into music.
Yeah.
He passed away when I was 6, so like right around when I started playing piano. But he played guitar, he toured, he was an entertainer. So a part of me kind of feels like when I play the guitar and when I'm doing what I do now, I kind of get a sense of what his life might have been like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I get to know him in a way that maybe other people in my family do not.
Totally.
I can't obviously know fact for fact, but I think that was a big influence. So he's from Argentina. My mother's from Brazil. And we would have a lot of Brazilian music playing in the house. And for me personally, I love Bossanova. And if you listen, I don't know if you're familiar with the genre, but it's like the most famous song is The Girl from Ipanema, tall and tan and young and lovely.
Oh,
the
of
girl
course.
from Ipanema goes walk. Right? It was like primo elevator music in the late 60s and stuff.
Yeah.
That's a big music. So Bossanova. And in later years, with the kind of music I sing and the kind of voice that I have, I've listened to a lot of like old school R&B.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it's very hilarious.
Give me an example of an artist that you're talking about.
Usher. Gotta let it burn. Deep down, that. Met her on a Monday. Took her for a date on Tuesday. We were making love on a Wednesday. And I thought, that song?
Yeah,
and
of course.
Thursday and Friday and Saturday we chill on Sunday.
Yep.
That's big in R&B. In R&B music, there's a lot of like listing, like days of the week numbers, like 1,
You're right.
like a dream come true. 2, just want like there's a lot of listing going on. And so one of the comedy bits I've thought about doing for so long, but I don't know how to do it, is going back to old R&B songs and adding consent to all of them. Because a lot of R&B music is like, I want to fuck you all night, girl.
Yeah.
Some, I don't know if you have to bleep that out. I'm sorry.
I'll put a parental advisory on this episode. Yeah.
Okay, good. I played classical piano for about 10 years and then gave up on that. No, I didn't give up. I just hated practicing.
Okay.
Then about a year or two later, I picked up a guitar and took about 2 months of lessons, and then I just said I'll do this on my own. And then
how old were you at that time?
16, 17.
Okay.
Yeah, because I played piano from about 5 or 6 till 15 or 16.
Okay.
And then I picked up the guitar and that was it.
You mentioned that you played piano for 10 years, but you hated practicing. Yeah, you hated it.
And I was really good, and so it's a shame that I stopped. I'd be a millionaire if I kept doing that.
Right. What was it about guitar that felt more like play and was more fun for you that made you stick with it?
Well, guitar is definitely, and the way I play it is definitely an accompaniment instrument. Mm-hmm. So the real thing for me is my voice and my melodies, right? So the guitar, I could play a couple chords, and I don't have to think much about it. I could go into the crowd. It's like 4 chords. Yeah. Classical piano is a whole other beast. It's just so complicated when you get... Because I was getting to a level where I was playing some pretty complicated music, but... you got to practice the left hand for 2, like get that, then the right hand, put it together, and then you're doing all these things, and it's just a lot more work. Like I wish that my teacher had taught me like jazz piano or something.
Something a little more improvisational.
Because jazz really allows you the opportunity to play, where classical piano doesn't. You can play in the way you express the music, but that doesn't feel like enough for me. And then I was doing stand-up for about 6 years. I went to NYU for theater. And then about 6 years into stand-up, I kind of hit a wall. I had all these opportunities that kind of fell through. I don't know, I just wasn't happy with my material. And then somebody had suggested, because he had seen me mess around with the guitar when I had friends over, he was all right, make fun of him with the guitar or whatever. And he's like, why don't you do that? That's really funny. The music comedy didn't come in till about 6 years ago for real. And so I took a chance. I took a summer I wrote 2 songs. I think the important thing to note is I didn't say I'm going to do this from now on.
Right.
I think if we want to bring it back to the theme of the podcast, which we talk about play, I think when you are playing in a creative space, you can't go into it like, I do this now. This is it.
Yeah.
I'm going to paint with watercolors, but now I'm going to do oils. I don't think it's like that. I think
and only cats.
You have, yeah, and I think you have to come with it in an attitude is like, you know what? I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to try and I'm going to have fun. And if it's not good, at least maybe I'll take away something from it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I approached it. So 2 months, I wrote 2 songs, maybe. I think I wrote 2 songs. And I took them around town at open mics. I tried them out. I remember being very nervous about it. I would shake on stage. And this is after, 6 years of doing stand-up and theater. So it was a very scary experience, transition. But, growth, as they say, happens outside the comfort zone. So it was a good thing.
When you went to school for theater, did you have an idea of what you wanted to pursue while you were studying theater?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be an actor. Not to say that I'm not, because I do that, but I do that. But I know from an early, the first week of college, even before my first acting class, I did an open mic and I did stand-up. So stand-up comedy was always something that I knew I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of power in this art form because it is only you on stage. You are in complete control. Everything rests on your shoulders. You don't have any fear of relying on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
That this sort of speaks to my, intimacy and trust issues on another end. But
we'll talk about those.
Acting was always a thing that I would do. But stand-up comedy and comedy performance in general, I think each informed the other one. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like each one helped the other one out. The acting made me a better performer, and the stand-up made me a better actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It all fed each other in a way that was really
100%.
Positive, in a way that worked for
100%.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think most comedians who are really great, if you look at some of the best ones, they are on stage doing really good, what we say is act outs. It's like Sebastian Maniscalco is a good example. Ali Wong's a good example. Mm-hmm. Dave Chappelle's a great example too.
Act outs. Explain that a little bit more.
All right. So for example, I told a joke last night about how men will sleep with anyone or anything, right? And I did this whole thing about how an astronaut could be exploring space, see a black hole, and he would try to have sex with it. And then I did an act out of a man being like sucked into a black hole by the head of his penis. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So you like the image, the whole, and what got so many laughs was the act out of like that whole scene that I did on stage.
The physical interpretation of it.
100%. So that's
got
the act out.
Okay, that explains it. Okay, I wasn't sure what that meant for a second. Okay, the actual physical manifestation of what you're talking about.
Yeah, you have the premise of the joke and then you act it out.
Yeah.
It's a classic bit, and most of the best comedians you'll see do that.
Yeah, for sure. They use their whole being.
Whole body. They use their whole body. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
When Morgan was growing up, he had a lot of creative influences. He was really inspired by his father, who was an Argentinian pop star. He played classical piano for a little bit. He loved old school R&B, Bossanova music. He obviously loved comedy and studied theater for a while. He experienced a lot of creative outlets before he landed on where he is. He didn't wake up one day and decide, I'm going to do musical comedy with my life. He had to experience a lot of different creative outlets and influences in order to get him to where he is today. By the time Morgan found musical comedy, he had experimented with all sorts of different things and was doing stand-up comedy for a good 6 years before he decided he needed to pivot and make a change. And it was only through the experimentation of adding the guitar at a suggestion of a friend that he really found that music and comedy worked really well for him. And just like Morgan, if you are committed to living a creative, playful life, it's going to take you down many twists and turns. You may try one creative outlet and decide it's not right for you, or you might like certain aspects of what you experienced, and it might inform and influence what you do next. So you have to stay open and exploratory in order to really get to what works for you. And Morgan is a great example of how to do that. So when did you move out to LA? And did you move out to LA to pursue music and comedy?
I moved out to LA about 7 years ago. I moved here for a girl, and I knew that I wanted to move out here no matter what, because I was in New York City for 7 years, and I met the girl, but I like, it was a good catalyst to bring me out here, because since then a lot of my my comedy has evolved. My whole life has changed. You know what I mean? So
yeah, good. It all works out the way it's supposed to.
It all works out. It all works out the way it's supposed to. Yeah. So if I die in an earthquake, that was predetermined, probably. So.
Yep, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
What has happened with your career since coming out to LA?
Since coming out to LA, I have acted in a couple TV commercials. I've been on 2 TV shows, nothing crazy. In the last 2 years specifically, I toured a lot of the country. These last 2 years have been the biggest years. I had my first TV appearances this year, and now I put out an album, which is really cool. I put out a couple music videos. I am in a position now where I'm pitching a TV show, and I'm working on another idea for a TV show, and I'm making a living doing what I love. So I suppose, like, you could say that I made it. If making a living on what you love to do is making it, I think I'm doing it, Well, I'm getting to the point in my career where it's starting to not feel like it's fun. So I have to remind myself and do things that make it fun every time, that make it exciting.
Because you have been so busy and there's a little more pressure around what you're doing.
I'm just coming off this several appearances on this show called NBC's Bring the Funny. Coming off of that, I have a manager, and we're looking for options for other tour dates. We're setting meetings with agencies. We are pitching a TV show next week. So it's like all these things on the other side that feel like work now, right? Because there are stakes, there is money on the line. Where up until like a year or two ago, I was just doing shows that paid $5, no money, open mics, things like that. Yeah. And now we're entering a realm of, I have what you call market validation, which is like people will spend money to see me. So I'm dealing with that, and I feel like it's consuming the part of my brain that's like creative and fun, and the guy that likes to, before bed, take a little puff of weed and then play his guitar for 45 minutes and come up with melodies and lyrics and things like that.
Yeah.
So now I feel this pressure, like, okay, Morgan, you have to come up with more material. And that is good. But it is at odds with the whole idea of play. Sorry,
how do you stay balanced mentally? And
100%.
And one of the definitions of play is that it's intrinsically motivated, meaning that sure, extrinsic rewards are great, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to come from within, and this self-direction. And how do you keep that intrinsic motivation there when you have external factors at play and when there's external pressures now? So that is a challenge.
It is a challenge. I think I have to remind myself of the headspace I was in 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is. I think a lot of people always say you're going to look back on the times when you were in a bar with 10 people doing a show, and you're going to miss that because you won't be able to get that that ability to play freely with no stakes. That opportunity to just try stuff out.
You're like, no, I won't miss that at all.
I know. I will miss that because I already do feel the pressure. But going forward, you don't know. I might have writers that help me write songs because I personally like to sing.
Okay.
So I say that, and I've discovered that in the last several years that I love to sing. No matter what, to sound nice. It's nice to sing. After I sing for an hour, I feel good. I feel better. So it doesn't necessarily matter exactly what I'm singing. However, I do like doing the funny song. We could talk about my material in a little bit, but just the aspect of singing feels good, Yeah. So I called a retirement home to volunteer and sing to a bunch of old people for like a half hour, and they were really about it, but I haven't heard back from them. So I suppose they were like, let's do it. And then I didn't hear back. So maybe I should follow up with them.
I think that speaks to an interesting point around keeping a habit of play in your life that is low stakes. So singing alone in your room, going to sing at a retirement home where there isn't this pressure around it, so that you remember what it's like to be creative with low stakes. You're at a really interesting point in your career now where you are getting some commercial success. So tell us about how Bring the Funny came to be, the reality show you were just on.
Yeah, two friends of mine had recommended to a casting associate back in October, almost a year ago. And then that person reached out to me. They asked me for some info. I had to fill out some form online. And then I didn't hear anything towards the end of February. I didn't hear anything. They were like, okay, we want to do a Skype interview with you. They looked through all my materials. They really liked what I did.
And at that point, were you doing your own shows? Were did you have an album out? Like where were you in your career?
In my career, I had an album on iTunes and Spotify. I was touring colleges, the college circuit, which it's all right. It pays well, but it's not like you're not going to be seen. You're not going to build the best audience that way.
Sure.
So I was making a living. I was getting booked a little bit more here and there. So I was just making a living. I was a no-name comedian making a living, which I think that happens for a lot of people. And that's not bad. I mean, you're making a living. If you can make a teacher's salary doing this, then that's a success, I think.
Yeah, for sure. You were still experimenting with how you could grow and make a living, but you were doing it.
Right. Yeah. But the goal is to get a TV credit. Once you get a TV credit, you can perform at clubs around the country, So I got an email like in late February that they were like they wanted to do a Skype interview, and I said okay. So we had a Skype interview about a week later, and then a week or two after that, my manager called and said they wanted to make me an offer for the show, and we would love for you to. They wanted to have me on the show, or they wanted to send me the paperwork because there was no guarantee that they would have me on the show. I have friends who were signed on to do it, but they were let go, because the show only allows for. It started with 40 performers,
Okay.
So, and they searched all like thousands of performers,
Yeah. How did it feel though to get that call from a manager saying that they wanted to offer you the paperwork?
Honestly, I was a little bit nervous about it because the reputation of Last Comic Standing, it didn't have the best reputation. And sometimes these talent competition shows, they put you in a category, like creatively and artistically, it feels very commercial, I think. At least in the peer community, right? But I actually spoke to a friend of mine who was on Last Comic Standing. He was a runner-up on one of the seasons, and I had a coffee with him, and I asked him what he thought of the whole situation, and he kind of was like, listen, there is nothing negative that can come from this. Worst case scenario, you get booted off the first episode, people forget about it, and then you just go on with your day. But I actually got 3 appearances. I made it 3 rounds. That was uncharted territory for me, where we're in a place now where things you can do can have implications who knows how many years down the line in your career.
Right. Yeah, you play one bad college show, no big deal. But if you have a shaky appearance on TV, it feels like the stakes are higher.
Yeah, if you choke on TV, it's your first appearance. because I always am afraid that people's first impression of you is their only impression of you. And there's also you're constantly being monitored and documented as a performer and an entertainer online. Mm-hmm. So I was nervous about that. So I took a couple days to think about it, and then, eventually I signed on to do it, and it turned out to be really good. I was a little bit nervous because in the contract they told me the sets meaning the length of my performance would be, 3 minutes, and then when I got to the show, it was like 2.5 minutes, and then even then they were like, we have the liberty to cut it down to whatever minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These competition shows, they're not like you doing a set on late night with Seth Meyers or the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, where those you are booked, you're doing 5 minutes of your material, they're not going to cut away from you, they're not going to do anything. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of fear. About that because I was relinquishing a lot of control of my craft,
Yeah.
But it turned out all right.
Yeah.
So all the things I was afraid of didn't really happen.
The last couple years have been really good for Morgan's career. He's starting to see a lot of traction and success, especially following his appearance on NBC's Bring the Funny. He has a lot of exciting things ahead, but with that comes more pressure. Higher stakes are at play now. And I really love that Morgan shared that part of his journey with me, because I think it's really easy to think that once I hit a certain amount of success, I will be happy and I can just relax. But as you reach higher levels of success, of growth, personal actualization, that just comes with a different set of pressures. And you really have to practice at maintaining that sense of groundedness and creative playfulness despite all the higher stakes that you may be feeling. And I love that Morgan shared that he's trying to go to a nursing home and to sing to some old people for a half hour, because that's an example of how you can continue to maintain that playful spirit even when you are feeling that pressure on you. So if you are on a creative path on your own, make sure you find ways to stay grounded and stay connected to your playful self, because as you get more successful, as you start to feel more vulnerable, you're going to have to work even harder to stay connected to that inner child of yours.
When you start working in an art form, whether it's painting, whether it's music, whether it's comedy, I think you have to open yourself up to every aspect of it. So for a long time, for example, I didn't think country music had value, or I didn't like it. It didn't speak to me. But now, when you're writing a song, I'll listen to now that I'm writing music, and I'll listen to a country song and I'll be like, wow, the lyrics in this song are so impressive. Or the melody, you know what I mean? You realize, it's like if you're a filmmaker, when you watch a movie, you can't really totally enjoy it because you're looking at all these different aspects of it,
Sure. But yeah, there's something to learn from everything, and inspiration you can take from everywhere if you have an open, creative mind and you're willing to learn from everything. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah, there's something called like the input-output. You have to, in order to create, you have to input. There's no really original thought or idea.
Yeah.
But the only thing that is original is you and what you do in your brain, right? So you have to read books, go to museums, listen to music, do all these things, and then, hopefully in a month or two, you'll poop out something that is influenced by all of it.
That's unique to you. Yeah. Your own poop.
100%.
Yep.
100%. Yeah. I did this new bit for the first time last month where I don't even know if you could call it comedy, if you could call it music, but I have a loop pedal, right? And I looped, and my iPhone ringtone, on the microphone, I looped it, right? And I'm going to just show you the ringtone that I looped.
Okay, sure.
This is a fun thing, because this came from playing. I was in my friend's car, I was changing my ringtone, and I was just messing around. And I was like, wait a second. These sounds like this could be like a song.
Huh.
So can I show you this real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do you hear that?
Yeah.
There's that one, and there's, in any case, this, if you see here, it goes, you can hear like,
Yeah.
sail away, sail away, sail away.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I heard that.
So I used this one, right? So I looped this one. And then this felt really like earthy, moon power crystal, electric daisy carnival kind of, vibe, right?
Yeah.
So I took somebody on stage and I put my hand on their forehead and I did this whole bit where I was going to open up their third eye, Now, I don't know what it is, but the crowd lost their mind over it. They thought it was amazing. I brought other people on stage with me, and that just came from, playing around with your phone. Like, this is input. You know what I mean? Like, that's how much it can be.
Yeah. You have to give yourself space and time to just mess around and experiment and, like you said, take in input so that you can be inspired to produce something. Yeah.
100%.
I think the key thing is that you experimented before finding your art and what worked for you, and you incorporated comedy, theater, music, guitar, interacting with people, your ringtone, in order to find what works for you in your own unique voice.
You gotta use everything you know.
If you are going to be a playful person, you have to do just that. Play. Be creative with no intention or goal. Go do things that inspire you, that make you feel joyful, and maybe creative breakthroughs will happen. But here's the thing. You can't expect them to happen. You can't do things with the expectation that epiphanies are going to rain down upon you. You have to do them because you love them. You love the journey of experiencing them. For example, Morgan talked about a time where he was messing around on his phone, he was changing up the ringtones, and before you knew it, one of the ringtones had inspired him to create a new bit for his performance. He brought people up on the stage, did this really funny interaction with them, and the audience just loved it. And this was all from him just messing around on his phone without any intention of any sort of creative breakthrough happening. So, if you are going to be a creative person, make sure you give yourself time to play, meander, and do things without that goal in mind. Maybe some breakthrough will happen, maybe it won't, but regardless, you'll become a more playful person, which is what we're all after at the end of the day. So we talked a little bit about how you come up with creative material. How do you come up with the ideas that you have for the content, lyrics, the words of what you do? Because I know you do a lot around relationships, love, dating. Where does the inspiration come from your own life, or do you pull from other places?
Yeah, I think it comes from a lot from my own life. The ideas do, right? So I have this one song called ... that's about text fighting. And people ask me, is that based off of a real conversation? And the answer is yes and no. The idea comes from that. And then you try to find a way to make it specific and broad enough for people to latch on to different moments of it. It's like usually the process for me is I have the idea, the spark. I have a list of song ideas. I may not get to them. I don't know if you could see behind me. Do you see that wall?
Yeah, I do. All the notes on it?
Yeah, so all those note cards like represent a different idea, like a different list. One is music, one is TV, one is literature, one is books, different song ideas that I might tackle. But I think a lot of musicians will agree when you are getting paid to do this and it becomes a job, you don't like have the luxury of waiting for inspiration to hit you all the time. I think I was an intern at Late Night with Conan O'Brien for a semester about 10 years ago. One of the things one of the writers gave me was a book about comedy writing. And I think one of the things this book highlighted was if you work at a show like that, you have to show up every day and be able to write 60 to 100 jokes a day. And that's your job. So I should also point out comedy is the only art form that has a very defined outcome.
Laughs.
So it's not like music. It's not like art where you walk through a museum and see how this piece affects you. People pay money to go see you and laugh. And if they don't laugh, then you're fired. You know, they're not going to come back to see you again. So
yeah,
it's one of the few. I think it's as meritocratic as you can get with an art form. So what I was going to say was with the creativity part, I have an app here called Auto Chords, and essentially you could shuffle it, and it will come up with a different chord progression. You hear that?
Oh yeah, interesting.
And then I'll play around with that, and I'll see if any melodies come to mind, and I'll just sort of intonate. A really good podcast to listen to is actually this one called Song Exploder.
Okay.
And it basically talks about how every musician comes up with their songs and how they write them.
Yeah.
In a very in-depth way. And one of the things I realize is I'm not so much different than them. You have a melody, and you just sort of like there's no words, but you just kind of have to vocalize something. Most of the time I start with a melody first, and then I'll go into the lyrics.
Okay.
You know? So the idea will most of the time try to fit a melody. Like right now, I have an idea for a song about when you're taking a poop in a public bathroom, and then a little boy looks at you through the crack of the stall. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's already
yeah,
it's
of course.
Like, maybe in the women's restroom it's a little girl, but like you're sitting there and then somebody's kind of like you're like, what?
Right.
Why are you staring at me?
What's happening in there? No.
Yeah, so that's the idea. Is it going to be a full song? I honestly don't know. It could just end up being like a line or two in a set. But I've been toying around with melodies for that, and I still haven't figured it out. Some songs happen really easily. Like I have this song called "Split the Check." That was an easy one to write. Some are really easy to write, some are really hard. I don't know what it is about it. When I found out that people love my crowd work, now, because before when I started writing the songs, it was just like, I'm going to write a song. But then I started when I was doing so many So Far Sounds shows, I ended up interacting with the crowd a lot. And because in that space, this is actually really important. In the So Far Sounds space, I was the only comedian there. So I had this kind of ability to work with the crowd in a way that other musicians couldn't. And I was able to grow it in that space because I could never do that in comedy shows.
Right.
And feel comfortable about it. Because, at comedy shows, you're like, you have to make them laugh. Where the music show, there wasn't that pressure. It was like, we can just play and have a good time and we're all hanging out. Because at the end of the day, we're just singing songs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So perfect, too, because lots of couples at So Far Sounds shows. So it was perfect to interact there.
And as far as dating relationships, me, I've always had a hard time holding down a relationship. I have intimacy issues. I also have a job that is a nighttime job, and being a boyfriend is also a nighttime job. And so you are in a position where when you're with a girl, they're supportive of your career up to a point, until they're like, hey, babe, you think you could stay home and watch a movie with me? And you're like, well, I know this doesn't seem like work to you, but like this is my job and I have to.
That's just a story. You'll find someone that will be all about that. But yes, I can understand why that would be challenging. Got so many interesting things you said in that last bit there, just around, yes, there is creative space and openness to play. But then there are times when you're thinking about, okay, let's actually create something now, and here's the melody, here are the lyrics, here is how they work together. So it goes from the creative playing space to the work and getting to that place.
And the process for that has changed for me a little bit, because one of the things that I've started doing now is breaking it down into smaller tasks. I think it can be really intimidating to say, I have to write a new song and it has to be great. So if you break it down into tasks, now I do it that way. Like, all right, come up with a melody, do a song sketch. Song sketching is basically when I sing into this for like a half hour with a chord progression. So come up with a melody. Now go back and write down all the lyrics that you liked. So that's step 2. And then step 3 is, okay, finalize a first draft. Step 4 is, all right, now perform it live. Okay. Step 5 is find the moments of crowd work that work. And then step 6 is finalize that and polish it up. And then before you know it, you have a full song. And I think if you could break it down into smaller tasks, I think this is good advice for anybody in any field. If you feel a little bit overwhelmed with a job, just break it down into small tasks and small goals, because then you sort of chip away at it little by little.
And you probably learn something different too every time you perform it, and then you
100%.
You refine it a little bit there every time you perform it.
That song ... I've been singing for 3 years now. And it still changes, and it's different it's so different than it was 3 years ago. And I'm still finding things in it that I could do differently.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
So
it doesn't stop.
It's always really, for me personally, I think that's one of the reasons why audiences like me. I mean, you could come see me perform. I mean, I have a friend who's seen me perform maybe 20, 30 times, and he maintains that it is always funny every time, and he's always surprised. Everything is always a little bit different, you know? Mm-hmm. And I would go out on a limb and say that might be one of the reasons why people come back to see me, is because they know the music and they're really excited to see what's going to be different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's also, and this is also a good thing to touch on, the live performance aspect of it. I put these moments in all the songs that can be spontaneous, so that way every performance feels fun. I think one of the things that I didn't like about stand-up was once you wrote the joke, you just repeated the joke over and over again. And, there's no fun in that.
Right, right. No room to play.
So,
yeah.
No room to play in that.
So, while it's important to be creative and playful with no goal or agenda sometimes, it's equally important to make sure you sit down and get the work done, even if you're not inspired. Those are two ends of the spectrum that seem very conflicting at times, and I think the beauty of being human is being able to navigate both ends of the spectrum gracefully. Because, like Morgan said, if you are a person who's paid to produce creative work, you don't have the luxury of waiting for inspiration to strike all the time. You're going to have to sit down and do the work even if you don't feel creatively inspired. And Morgan manages that a number of different ways. He will take it step by step. He will start with the melody first, and then add the lyrics, and then refine the song, and then he'll perform it and learn something from that, and then modify the song a little bit from there. And the process never stops, but you have to sit down and do the work. I love that Morgan shared that part of his journey, because I think it would be really easy to assume that artists and creative people just have creativity spilling out of their pores all the time, but that's not necessarily true. If you don't feel creatively inspired all the time, that's okay. That's normal. So be compassionate on yourself. And if you are doing your own creative work, there are going to be times where it will come really easily and flow out of you. But there will be other times where you're going to have to sit down and take it step by step and refine as you go and produce something so that you can get the work done. What have been some of the challenges so far in getting here? You have lots of plans ahead still, but so far up until this point where you have been able to make a living doing what you love now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the challenges are, I mean, the main thing is the guitar. A lot of people, they don't consider it, real comedy or something. I don't know what it is. God, I did a show. I won this competition like 2 weeks ago where I won a hefty chunk of change. And one of the comics was like, man, if you need a guitar and you need to do this or that, then you need the money more than I do. And it was like, everybody in the crowd saw the whole show.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's one of the challenges. The pushback is the guitar,
From other comedians and from the comedy culture?
From other comedians, yeah, from comedians and comedy culture. There's pushback from that. And
interesting.
it's unfortunate. I think I think this is they call it show business. They don't call it like comedy business. That's a big part of it. I have a little chip on my shoulder about it. It's like we're supposed to be entertaining on
Right.
stage.
Yep.
So whatever form that takes. And I mean, decades ago, most performers could sing, they could dance, they were comedians. If you watch old shows like the Carol Burnett Show, I mean, they were doing literally every aspect of comedy on that show.
Right.
So I don't know where this whole thing came in, where like stand-up comedy is this pure art form.
That is.
When nobody likes that I use a guitar.
Yeah, it's interesting that there is such a need for there to be such a specific pigeonholing of you, and that's interesting that you've gotten that pushback, and I don't think I would have expected that, and I don't know why there is a need to put any of us really in specific categories and say that you have to stay there and that's it.
You saw me at a music show, and I was doing comedy, so I live in this weird lane where I could do both, and what's the matter if it's entertaining? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just so.
Right. Do you find that affects you on a personal level, just in creating your material?
It makes me realize that at the end of the day, I might have to do this all on my own. Meaning I might have to build my audience on my own, sell my own tickets, because I am living in a city and working in an industry where it's very popular to categorize performers. Like they're the lesbian Asian performer. They're the nerdy black guy. They're the straight white man, alpha bro. They're the impractical jokers, are those Italian dudes from Jersey who prank people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. In a way, it kind of democratizes the entertainment industry, and it gives a voice to all these different groups of people. Did you ever see, there was an interview with Dave Chappelle, and one of the things, it was inside the actor's studio, and he said something, there's a place where art and corporate interests meet in the middle, and you have to like be able to live there if you want to be a successful artist. Monetarily successful. Yeah. Because you could be an artist. You can be an artist and play and do whatever you want. But there is a place in the middle where you do have to meet. You know what I mean? Like
there's a Venn diagram, the middle where the Venn diagram comes together.
I discovered that a lot at the TV show over this last year, because in April I sent them all of my bits, and then they were like, we love all of them, but this is what we need you to edit.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson to learn.
You have to play our game a little bit if you want to be on our show.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
There's the other way. There's the way some artists do it, where they build up their own following in a way that overtakes any network television's interests, and then they build their own. They create their own show, create their own YouTube show, and then Netflix picks it up.
Is Reggie Watts is a good example. You know who Reggie Watts is?
Yes, he's a comedian, rapper,
musical
artist. Yeah,
improviser.
Yeah, I saw him at Outside Lands a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he's somebody that's really inspiring, because he was actually in a legit musical group, and then he left that, and then he spent a decade doing his own thing with the beatboxing, making up whatever. And then he grew an audience, and people just kept booking him, and eventually he became the lead band member of the Corden show, the Late Late Show with James Corden.
Yeah.
So essentially he put himself in a position where he created his own lane. People saw that, people were into it. So that's the hope I have for my own stuff, you know what I mean? Because I find a lot of people trying it hard to put me in a box and figure out how to pitch me or sell me.
Yeah, what category do you fit into? And there isn't a category. Dealing with those people that are perhaps naysayers, the ones that do push back against the whole guitar.
The haters,
we can call them that. Do you have any personal practices you have around dealing with that personally?
Yeah, I go to my friend and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, why are they being like this? Yeah. I don't get it.
Tell your therapist.
I literally just had it this morning. There's a show in San Francisco. I'm doing a couple of tour dates in San Francisco towards the end of October.
Cool.
And there's a show that it's a really great room, and these guys, for some reason, they won't book me anymore. And this morning he messaged me and was like, listen, last time you ran the light, and I was like, no, I didn't. So, and there was a tape of it. So I sent him the tape, and I clearly didn't. Running the light means you go over your time.
Oh, okay. I was like, what does that mean? Ran a traffic light? Okay.
So yeah, running the light, basically when you have a minute left, they light you in the back of the room.
Uh-huh.
So he said I ran the light. There was video footage and evidence of me not running the light. And so I sent it to him, and then he was like, okay, well, make sure to show up on time, do X, Y, and Z. And at that point I was like, all right, this dude just doesn't like me. This has nothing to do with my comment. I've been doing this 12 years. I make there's nothing. So you just have to be like, well, you kind of have to just be like, that emoji, you got to do this emoji.
Yeah. Got to let it go.
And be like, all right, well, these people, they don't fuck with you, and some people will, some people won't. You can't be going, if you try to obsess over who's messing with you or not, it could really be detrimental to your mental health.
Totally.
Also, staying off of social media is as much as I can, because sometimes that could be really bad too.
You have to choose what you let affect you. And this is one guy, right? Out of all the other venues and places you play, you can't let him take over your mental space.
I will say, as comedians, we do have a bad habit of always focusing on the person in the room who's not laughing. That's just a bad habit we do. Sometimes you could be murdering. I was in San Francisco. When was I there? I think I went there after you saw me, but I did a show where I was murdering, and there was two people that were sitting there was like 100 people in the room. And there was two people in the room who literally just sat there like this. The whole, you're like, what's going on? It can't be me. They just must have had a bad day. Like, what is going on?
Right.
You know? You know what the annoying thing is? Those are the two people. They're the cancel culture. They'll say some shit and then you're canceled. Meanwhile, 99% of everybody fucking loves you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Full circle.
And you have to be so disciplined with yourself to not let it affect you mentally and make it about you. That's so hard. I mean,
just so hard when you're up there and you could see them just like, what, dude? Let's get to know each other. What's going on?
Right.
Why am I not getting through to you?
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because I think we think entertainers are immune to that sort of stuff. And
God, no.
No.
Not at all.
Right? And I think, we normal people, of course, we worry about people not liking us, but entertainers, they're on stage. They don't care.
Oh, and it happens on such a public level. Like, if you go to my YouTube, if you go to all the performances from my TV appearances, they're on YouTube on NBC's channel, and you look at some of the comments, I'd say most of them, there's like thumbs downs. And a lot of them, there's some people who are like, this guy's trash. This guy sucks. And you're like, well, the ratio's good. My ratio is pretty good, considering like other like I look at it that way. If you look at other people's performances, their ratios are very not good, and mine are pretty good.
Right. But those people that are spending time and energy putting out that negative energy when there's so many other things they could be doing, why do we care about their opinion? We just do.
Yeah. And it's like, they can't do this. If they could do this, then they would do it. But they just sit in a room and say that you're lame,
Totally.
It's like it's so hurtful.
Exactly. Do you know who Brene Brown is?
Yeah, but tell me more. Where were you going to go with this?
Yeah, she's amazing. No, but she talks about the Roosevelt quote around the man in the arena, and I'm not going to say it perfectly, but just it's something along the lines of the ones that are brave are the ones that are in the arena, getting their asses handed to them, getting their butts whooped, essentially. And it's not, the brave ones are not the ones in the stands that are booing and yelling jeers, but it's the man in the arena. So it's a good little quote.
And the woman in the arena,
Yes.
and the trans person in the arena.
Of course.
Because you're in San Francisco, we got to get all the labels out. We can't.
Right. There's a lot of them.
It's all the pronouns in the arena.
On the journey of becoming a playful, expressive, creative person, there are going to be times when people just don't understand you. There are going to be people that may not even like you because they don't get what you are about. And Morgan has experienced this. There are some people that don't understand why he brings a guitar into a comedy show. Or there will be people that probably don't understand why he brings comedy into a music show. And it can be really challenging when you are putting yourself out there, you are being your most expressive, authentic self, and then people reject you. So the challenge is to show up even when you have those people that are telling you that they don't understand you or they don't like you. And it's about staying grounded and true to who you are. The challenge lies in being true to yourself and not fitting yourself in a box to make everyone happy. Because guess what? That's not possible, and not everyone is going to like you. You're going to have to trust that the right people will be your fans, and that the right people will follow your work and love your work. Some rapid fire questions. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a child?
My 8th grade yearbook says I wanted to be an NBA player.
Aha. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I was going to say read people's thoughts, but that seems kind of invasive.
Hey, if you could choose.
The way the mystery. Yeah. Teleportation.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
It'd be really great to just get from one place to another like that.
Yeah.
No traffic, no nothing.
Go
be like, all right, be there.
Yeah.
Gotta go. Whoop.
Go play a show in Japan and then come home that same night.
Love to be able to teleport.
Yep. Do you have any play idols or people who you really admire the way they use play in their life?
Yeah, Rory Scovel, who's a comedian who's incredible. Reggie Watts, who's incredible. Yeah, those two, they play like nobody else plays. Rory Scovel, literally, he's been doing this thing where he improvises a full hour of stand-up comedy.
Oh my God.
It's incredible to watch. So he's like next level of that, you know.
Incredible. Any pieces of wisdom you have to share with anyone about keeping a playful spirit for the rest of their life?
Yeah, I think you got to look at like what kids do, and just remember what that was like. You got to be silly, man. You know what I do to get me in a silly mood? I do 2 things to get me in a silly mood. I do air drumming, and I make a silly face, you know, to be really silly. You know, you're already laughing. We're already having a good time.
Yep.
And I have a playlist on my Spotify music called Freestyle. And I will try to freestyle. I'm not a good freestyler, like rapper. So it's freestyle rap. So I don't know if this is specific to me, but I guess what I would say is find the thing that makes you feel silly and do that regularly.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that.
No, because there's like a silliness in you that exists that you gotta not care about certain things, you know? Yeah. I think people are really wrapped up in what people think of them, and I mean, I know I am, but sometimes it doesn't even matter. Most people are wrapped up in their own thoughts that you'd be surprised how little they care about you.
Right. I don't know. I can't remember who I heard this from, but it was I'm sure a wiser adult, but they said when you're in your 20s, you care so much about what people think about you. When you're in your 30s, you start to care less about what people think about you. And then when you're in your 40s and beyond, you realize that no one was thinking about you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I don't know. And you know what? I don't know. Yeah, I would say that because I think what happens, though, also is when you are in your 40s and older, you lose value in our current society.
Oh,
also.
What a cynical thing to say.
Like, people don't care about you. People are like, they're old. Let's look at these Instagram models. They're hot.
All right, I have 6 more years of relevance then. Hooray.
You know what I'm saying? My friend just turned 33 today. She's freaking out.
Is she really? Oh.
Yeah. I think the 30s are dope, though.
I like them.
I'm 32, so, you know.
I'm a fan of the 30s so much more than the 20s.
Oh, yeah.
100%. I love it. Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to see how your career progresses. And I know people can find you on Instagram. Any other way for them to get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, just slide into the DM. You can also get through my website, and I'm at the moment I'm pretty accessible. So
yeah,
not to say that I won't be in the future, but I will say that this has been overwhelming. All the direct messages and the comments that I've been getting on my stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's hard to keep up with it. So I don't know how real celebrities do this shit. They hire somebody to do it. It seems insane.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, there's no way you could respond to all the DMs if you were J-Lo or something. Yeah. I see big things ahead for you, and I'm excited to follow along on the journey. Would love to stay in touch and look forward to seeing you in San Francisco next month. Amazing.
I'm doing these. I'm trying to bring this into like peace signs that are small,
rather than the hey.
Peace.
All right.
All right. I will talk to you next time.
Yes, sounds good, Morgan. Thank you again. Take care. Okay. Bye. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with the wonderful Morgan J. I hope you took away some insights for yourself for your own creative, playful journey. If you haven't seen Morgan perform before, I highly recommend it. Go follow him on Instagram at MorganJ or sign up for his email list at morganj.com. You really have to watch him perform and in action to really get what he's all about. And he is so entertaining and so fun. Just be aware that he might pick on you if you're in the audience. You can find some of the resources and the things mentioned on the show notes at therecesslife.com. I'll also post some fun clips from when he appeared on NBC's Bring the Funny. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Are you looking for more play in your life? Make sure you're subscribed to the Recess Life podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or any of the podcast platforms. You can also find the video interviews on YouTube. Don't forget to leave a review. Your feedback is so important to me, and it helps others to find the podcast. You can also follow the conversation on Instagram at The Recess Life. And lastly, you can go to therecesslife.com where you'll find all the episodes and show notes on each of our guests. I hope this podcast helps you to become a little more playful today than you were yesterday. Until next time, don't forget to get out and play today.